The crystal chandeliers caught Zara Zimmerman's eye as she entered the grand ballroom, momentarily distracting her from the anxiety that had been building since she'd received the invitation to Heartwarming Publishing's annual charity gala. 3 years at the company had earned her a senior editor position, but nothing had prepared her for facing her ex, Derek Warner, who would undoubtedly be here tonight. She smoothed down her emerald silk dress, a splurge that had seemed necessary after the humiliating way their relationship had ended 6 months ago. "Breathe, Zara," she whispered to herself, accepting a flute of champagne from a passing server. The bubbles tickled her nose as she took a sip, scanning the crowded room filled with publishing elites, authors, and investors. That's when she saw him. Derek was leaning against the bar, his attention fixed on her, his expression darkening as he excused himself from his conversation and began moving in her direction. Zara's heart raced. Their breakup hadn't been amicable. His controlling behavior had escalated until she'd finally walked away. But he hadn't taken it well, bombarding her with texts and showing up at her apartment unannounced until she'd threatened a restraining order. "You look amazing," Derek's voice came from behind her, causing her to flinch. "I've missed you." "Derek, don't," Zara said firmly, clutching her champagne flute tighter. "We agreed to keep things professional at work." "That was before you showed up looking like this," he replied, his hand reaching for her arm. "One drink for old time's sake." Before she could respond, a deep voice interrupted them. "Miss Zimmerman, there you are." Zara turned to find herself face to face with Blake Harrington, the newly appointed CEO of Heartwarming Publishing. At 35, he was the youngest CEO in the company's history and had been brought in 6 months ago to revitalize the struggling publishing house. Tall, with broad shoulders and sharp blue eyes, he commanded attention in his tailored black suit. "Mr. Harrington," she managed, surprised he knew her name. "I've been hoping to discuss your work on the Miller manuscript," Blake said smoothly, his eyes flickering briefly to Derek. "Would you mind joining me? There are some people I'd like you to meet." Understanding dawned on Zara. He was offering her an escape. "Of course," she replied, relief flooding through her. Derek's jaw tightened. "We were in the middle of something." "I'm afraid it will have to wait," Blake said, his tone polite but firm. "Miss Zimmerman's insights are needed elsewhere." He placed a gentle hand on the small of her back, guiding her away. Once they were a safe distance away, Zara exhaled. "Thank you for that." "No explanation needed," Blake assured her, his hand dropping from her back. "I've been wanting to speak with you anyway. Your editorial notes on the Miller manuscript were impressive." Zara blinked in surprise. "You read my notes?" "I make it a point to be aware of exceptional talent in my company," he replied with a slight smile. "Though I admit the timing of our introduction was fortunate. Your discomfort was visible from across the room." "Ex-boyfriend," Zara explained, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "We didn't end on the best terms." Blake nodded, his expression serious. "If he causes you any trouble tonight or at the office, please let me know." "Thank you, but I can handle Derek," Zara said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "I don't doubt that," Blake replied, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart skip. "But everyone needs backup sometimes." The orchestra began playing a new song, the melody filling the ballroom. Blake glanced toward the dance floor, then back at Zara. "Would you care to dance? It might discourage further interruptions." Zara hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that." As Blake led her onto the dance floor, his hand warm against hers, Zara caught Derek glaring at them from the bar. For a moment, anxiety fluttered in her chest, but as Blake's arm slipped around her waist, drawing her closer, her focus shifted entirely to him. "I should warn you," she said, looking up at him. I'm not the most graceful dancer." Blake's smile transformed his serious face, revealing a dimple in his left cheek. "Then we'll be perfectly matched. Harvard Business School didn't offer ballroom dancing courses." His self-deprecating humor surprised a laugh out of her. As they moved together, Zara found herself relaxing into his lead. Blake Harrington was nothing like the intimidating figure she'd imagined from company gossip. Up close, there was a warmth to his eyes and a gentleness to his touch that contradicted his reputation as a ruthless businessman. "So tell me about yourself beyond the impressive editorial skills," Blake said as they moved across the floor. "There's not much to tell," Zara replied. "I grew up in Oregon, moved to New York after college with dreams of becoming an editor, and now here I am." "You're selling yourself short," Blake observed. "Your file says you graduated top of your class from Columbia, speak 3 languages, and have brought in 2 bestsellers in the past year alone." "You've read my file?" Zara asked, surprised. "Like I said, I pay attention to talent," Blake replied. "Though I admit I'm curious about the parts that aren't in your file." The song changed to something slower, and Blake adjusted his hold, drawing her slightly closer. The subtle scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive, enveloped her. "What would you like to know?" Zara asked, suddenly aware of how intimately they were dancing. "What made you choose publishing? What drives you? What makes you smile on difficult days?" His questions were delivered with genuine interest, his eyes never leaving hers. For the next few minutes, Zara found herself opening up about her childhood love of books, how she'd fallen in love with editing during a college internship, and her dream of discovering the next great American novel. Blake listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions that revealed his own passion for literature. "Most people assume I'm just a numbers guy," he confessed when she asked about his background. "But I started as an English major before switching to business. Books have always been my escape." "What made you switch?" Zara asked, intrigued by this revelation. A shadow crossed his face. "Family expectations. The Harrington name comes with certain obligations." Before she could ask more, the song ended and they reluctantly stepped apart. Zara became aware of the curious glances from her colleagues, and reality crashed back. She was dancing with her CEO, the man who controlled the fate of her career. "I should probably," she began, but Blake interrupted her. "Would you like to get some air? The terrace is quieter." The invitation was tempting, but Zara hesitated. "People might talk." Blake's expression remained calm. "People always talk. The question is whether we let that stop us from enjoying a conversation." His directness was refreshing, and Zara found herself nodding. As they made their way toward the terrace doors, she felt Derek's eyes following them, his expression darkening further. The night air was cool against her skin as they stepped outside. The terrace overlooked the city, the lights of Manhattan twinkling below them. Only a few other guests had ventured outside, giving them a semblance of privacy. "Better?" Blake asked, watching as she took a deep breath. "Much," Zara admitted. "Large crowds aren't really my thing." "Mine either," Blake confessed. "Necessary evil in this position." They fell into easy conversation about books, publishing, and their shared love of historical fiction. Zara was surprised by how comfortable she felt with him, how the initial intimidation had melted away to reveal a man who was thoughtful, intelligent, and surprisingly funny. "You're not what I expected," she said finally. Blake raised an eyebrow. "And what did you expect? Someone more?" "I don't know, corporate. The rumors around the office paint you as this ruthless businessman who only cares about the bottom line." Blake leaned against the railing, his profile illuminated by the city lights. "There's some truth to that. I was brought in to save a company that was hemorrhaging money. Sometimes that means making difficult decisions." "But," Zara prompted, sensing there was more. "But I also believe that what makes Hartwick special is its people and the books they believe in," Blake finished. "Cutting costs is the easy part. Building something meaningful is harder." Their conversation was interrupted by the terrace door opening. Derek stepped out, his movements slightly unsteady, suggesting he'd had several drinks. "There you are," he said, his eyes fixed on Zara with an intensity that made her stomach clench. "You've been avoiding me all night." Blake straightened, his posture subtly shifting to place himself between Zara and Derek. "Mr. Warner, isn't it? From marketing." Derek's eyes narrowed. "This doesn't concern you, Mr. Harrington." "When one of my employees is uncomfortable, it concerns me," Blake replied calmly. "And Miss Zimmerman clearly doesn't wish to speak with you right now." Derek's face flushed with anger. "Zara and I have history. We have things to discuss." "No, we don't," Zara said firmly, finding courage in Blake's steady presence. "I've said everything I needed to say months ago, Derek." "You're making a scene," Derek hissed, stepping closer. "Is this why you broke things off? You've been screwing the boss." Blake's expression hardened. "That's enough, Warner. I suggest you leave before you say something you'll regret professionally." Derek laughed bitterly. "Threatening my job now. Real classy." "Not a threat," Blake replied evenly. "Simply pointing out that your current behavior isn't becoming of a Hartwick employee." For a tense moment, Derek seemed ready to escalate further. Then, with a final glare at Zara, he turned and stalked back inside. Zara released a shaky breath. "I'm so sorry about that." "Don't apologize for his behavior," Blake said, his voice gentle but firm. "Are you all right?" "Yes, Zara paused, embarrassment washing over her. "This isn't how I imagined meeting you for the first time." Blake's expression softened. "If it helps, I'm glad it happened this way, though I'm sorry about the circumstances." A comfortable silence fell between them as they both turned to look out at the city lights. After a moment, Blake spoke again, his voice quieter. "Would you like to get out of here? There's a small jazz club a few blocks away. Much quieter, better company." The invitation hung in the air between them. Zara knew she should say no. He was her boss, and getting involved would be complicated at best, disastrous at worst. But something about Blake Harrington made her want to take the risk. "I'd like that," she said finally. Her decision made, Blake's smile was worth any potential complications. As he offered her his arm, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that this one dance, this one night, might be the beginning of something unexpected. The jazz club was everything Blake had promised intimate, with soft lighting and music that wrapped around them like velvet. They sat at a small corner table, talking for hours about everything and nothing, the professional boundaries between them blurring with each shared laugh and lingering glance. By the time Blake walked her to her door at the end of the night, something had shifted between them. Standing in the dim light of her hallway, he hesitated before leaning down to place a gentle kiss on her cheek. "I'd like to see you again, Zara," he said, his voice low. "Not as your CEO, but as a man who finds himself unable to stop thinking about you." Zara's heart raced. "I'd like that too." As she closed the door behind him, Zara leaned against it, a smile spreading across her face. One dance had led to one night, and she had a feeling that night might lead to forever. The following Monday, Zara stepped into the elevator at Hartwick Publishing with butterflies in her stomach. After her night with Blake, they'd exchanged text messages throughout the weekend, casual, getting to know you messages that made her smile each time her phone chimed. But now, back in the office environment, she wasn't sure how to act. The elevator stopped at the editorial floor, and Zara stepped out, immediately running into her friend and colleague, Emma Thompson. "There you are," Emma exclaimed, pulling Zara into the break room. "Spill everything." "You disappeared from the gala with Blake Harrington." The Blake Harrington. The entire office is buzzing. Zara felt her cheeks warm. It wasn't like that. Derek was being difficult. Mr. Harrington helped me out. Mr. Harrington, Emma repeated with a knowing smile. So formal for someone who spent the evening dancing with you before whisking you away. We just went for drinks, Zara protested, though the memory of their intimate conversations at the jazz club made her pulse quicken. Uh-huh, Emma replied, clearly unconvinced. And the fact that he couldn't take his eyes off you all night means nothing. Before Zara could respond, her phone chimed with a message. She glanced down to see Blake's name on her screen. Good morning. Coffee in my office at 10. We have that manuscript to discuss. Zara couldn't help but smile. They did have a legitimate manuscript to discuss, the one she'd been editing for months, but she suspected books wouldn't be their only topic of conversation. That's him, isn't it? Emma asked, watching Zara's expression. Your face gives you away. It's complicated, Zara admitted. He's the CEO, Emma. And a human being, Emma pointed out. A very handsome human being who clearly likes you. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of anxiety and anticipation. At precisely 10 a.m., Zara knocked on Blake's office door, manuscript in hand to maintain the pretense of a professional meeting. Come in, his deep voice called. Blake's office occupied the corner of the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the city. He sat behind a massive desk, but rose when she entered, his professional demeanor softening into a warm smile. Zara, he said, her name sounding different in his voice. Thank you for coming up. I brought the Miller manuscript, she said, holding up the folder like a shield. Blake's smile widened. Always prepared. One of the many things I admire about you. He gestured to the sitting area in the corner of his office. Shall we? I ordered coffee. As they settled onto the comfortable leather couch, a respectable distance between them, Blake handed her a cup. One sugar. No cream, right? You remembered, Zara said, surprised. I remember everything about Saturday night, he replied, his voice lower. Including how much I've been looking forward to seeing you again. The professional pretense evaporated, though they both maintained it when his assistant came in briefly with some documents for Blake to sign. Once they were alone again, Blake turned to face her more fully. I realize this is unorthodox, he said. My position makes things complicated. Very complicated, Zara agreed, though she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. I've been thinking about it all weekend, Blake continued. And I want to be transparent with you. I'm interested in you, Zara, not because you work for me. In fact, that's the only downside. But I understand if you're uncomfortable with the situation. Zara appreciated his directness. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested too, but I've worked hard to get where I am. I don't want people thinking I'm getting special treatment. I would never let that happen, Blake assured her. Your work speaks for itself. Everyone in this company knows your value is based on your talent, not who you're seeing. And Derek. Zara began, voicing another concern. Blake's expression hardened slightly. I've already spoken with HR. His behavior at the gala was unacceptable, regardless of your personal history. He's been issued a warning. You didn't have to do that, Zara said, though she felt relieved. Yes, I did, Blake replied firmly. Not because of what's happening between us, but because no employee should feel harassed at company functions, or anywhere else for that matter. They spent the next hour genuinely discussing the manuscript, with Blake offering insights that impressed Zara. His business acumen hadn't come at the expense of his literary judgment. He had thoughtful comments about character development and narrative structure that revealed his deep love of storytelling. As their meeting drew to a close, Blake walked her to the door, maintaining a professional distance despite the electricity between them. "Have dinner with me tonight," he said quietly. "Somewhere private where we can talk without worrying about office politics." Zara hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that." "I'll pick you up at 7, Blake said, his smile making her heart race. "And Zara, thank you for giving this a chance." As she walked back to her office, Zara felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Starting something with Blake Harrington was risky, but the connection between them felt too powerful to ignore. One dance had indeed led to something she never expected. Over the following weeks, Blake and Zara carefully navigated their growing relationship, balancing professional boundaries at work with the deepening personal connection that flourished in private. They found sanctuary in quiet restaurants, hidden jazz clubs, and weekend escapes to Blake's Hamptons home where they could simply be Blake and Zara, away from the complications of CEO and employee. The first time they made love, a month after the gala, was in the Hampton house with rain pattering against the windows and moonlight spilling across the bed. Blake's touch was reverent, as though he couldn't quite believe she was real, and Zara found herself falling deeper than she'd ever fallen before. "I've never felt this way about anyone," he confessed in the quiet aftermath, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "It terrifies me." "Why?" Zara asked, propping herself up to look at him. "Because I've built my life around being in control," Blake admitted. "And with you, I'm completely undone." Those words stayed with Zara, warming her from the inside out. Blake Harrington, the powerful CEO who commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions without blinking, was vulnerable with her in a way that made her feel both powerful and protective. At work, they maintained a strictly professional relationship. Blake was careful never to show her special treatment, sometimes being harder on her projects to ensure no one could accuse him of favoritism. They arrived separately, left separately, and limited their interactions to necessary professional matters. But the subterfuge was harder than either had anticipated. 3 months into their relationship, the strain began to show. "I hate this," Blake admitted one evening as they sat on his penthouse balcony, the city lights twinkling below them. "I hate pretending I don't care about you when we're at work. I hate watching you walk into meetings and having to act like you're just another employee." Zara sighed, leaning into him. "I know, but what's the alternative? If people find out my career is compromised, everything I've worked for will be overshadowed by she's sleeping with the boss." Blake was quiet for a long moment. "What if I wasn't your boss?" "What do you mean?" Zara asked, pulling back to look at him. "I mean, what if we restructured the editorial department? Created a separate division that reports directly to the board instead of to me," Blake suggested, thinking aloud. "Or what if—" "Blake," Zara interrupted gently, "you can't reorganize an entire company just so we can date openly." "Why not?" he challenged. "Companies restructure all the time for less important reasons." Zara shook her head, though she was touched by his willingness to consider such dramatic steps. "Let's give it more time. We've only been together for a few months." But time only deepened their connection, making the separation at work more difficult. And despite their best efforts at discretion, rumors began to circulate. Emma cornered Zara in the break room one day, her expression concerned. "People are talking, Zara. Someone saw you getting into Blake's car last Friday." Zara felt her stomach drop. "We carpooled to a meeting with an author." "That's not what they're saying," Emma replied gently. "And Derek's been fueling the rumors, implying you're getting special treatment." The mention of Derek sent a chill through Zara. Since the gala, he'd been cold but professional, though she often caught him watching her with resentment simmering in his eyes. "I don't get special treatment," Zara protested. If anything, Blake is harder on my projects than anyone else's. Emma's eyebrows rose at Zara's use of his first name, but she didn't comment on it. I believe you, but perception matters in this industry. Just be careful, okay? The warning proved prescient. The following week, Zara was presenting a new acquisition to the editorial board when Derek interrupted her. Interesting that all your proposals get fast-tracked these days, he said, his voice casual but loaded with insinuation. Must be nice having the CEO's special attention. The room fell silent, the other editors shifting uncomfortably. Zara felt heat rise to her cheeks, but before she could respond, the door opened and Blake walked in. He assessed the tension in the room with one glance, his eyes moving from Derek's smug expression to Zara's flushed face. Is there a problem? Derek shrugged, feigning innocence. Just curious about the approval process for certain editors' projects. Blake's expression didn't change, but Zara saw the muscle in his jaw tighten. All projects are evaluated on merit, Mr. Warner. If you have specific concerns about the process, my door is always open. He turned to Zara. Please continue, Miss Zimmerman. The rest of the meeting proceeded without incident, but the damage was done. As they filed out, Zara could feel the speculative glances of her colleagues. Blake caught her arm as she passed, keeping his voice professional but low. My office. 5 minutes. When Zara entered his office 5 minutes later, Blake was pacing, his expression thunderous. This can't continue, he said without preamble. I won't have you subjected to this kind of innuendo and disrespect. It was just Derek being Derek, Zara said, though the incident had shaken her. It's more than that, Blake replied, running a hand through his hair in frustration. He's creating a hostile work environment for you, and I can't address it properly without making things worse. Zara sank into a chair, the reality of their situation hitting her anew. So what do we do? Blake stopped pacing, his expression softening as he looked at her. I've been thinking about this for a while. I have a proposal, but I want you to know there's no pressure. Your career matters to me as much as our relationship. What kind of proposal? Zara asked cautiously. Blake sat across from her, taking her hands in his. Hartwick Publishing is opening a new imprint focusing on literary fiction, your specialty. The editor-in-chief would report directly to the board of directors, not to me. Zara's eyes widened as she understood what he was suggesting. And you want me to run it? You're the most qualified person for the job, Blake said simply. Your editorial instincts are impeccable. You have relationships with top agents and authors, and you've consistently acquired books that win awards and sell well. It's a promotion you've earned, completely separate from our relationship. Zara pulled her hands away, conflicted. But people will still talk. They'll say I got it because of you. Some might, Blake acknowledged, but your work will silence them eventually. And more importantly, you'll be free from the direct reporting structure that makes our relationship problematic. It was a tempting solution, a dream job that would also allow them to be together openly. But Zara hesitated, her independence fiercely important to her. I need time to think about it. Blake nodded, understanding in his eyes. Take all the time you need. The position won't be officially announced for another month. But events forced their hand sooner than expected. 3 days later, Zara was working late, the office nearly empty as she finished notes on a manuscript. A knock on her door made her look up to find Derek leaning against the doorframe, his expression unreadable. Working late again, he observed. So dedicated. Zara tensed, not liking his tone or the fact that they were alone. I have a deadline, Derek. What do you need? He stepped into her office, closing the door behind him. I need you to admit what's going on between you and Harrington. That's none of your business, Zara replied, reaching for her phone. Derek moved quickly, snatching the phone before she could grab it. It becomes my business when you're sleeping your way to promotions that other people deserve. I've earned everything I've achieved here, Zara said firmly, standing up. Now please leave. This conversation is inappropriate. Derek's expression darkened. We were good together, Zara. Then you threw it all away and now you're screwing the boss. I wonder what the board would think about that. Are you threatening me? Zara asked, anger replacing her initial fear. Just stating facts, Derek replied. Hartwick has strict policies about fraternization. Someone should tell HR. Give me my phone, Derek, Zara demanded, holding out her hand. Instead of complying, he stepped closer, invading her space. Or what? You'll call your boyfriend, have him fire me. That would just prove my point. The door opened suddenly and Blake stood there, his expression glacial as he took in the scene. Mr. Warner, step away from Miss Zimmerman immediately. Derek's face paled slightly, but he recovered quickly. Just having a private conversation with my ex, nothing to worry about. It didn't look private, Blake replied, his voice dangerously calm. It looked like harassment, and I believe Miss Zimmerman asked for her phone. Derek hesitated, then tossed the phone onto Zara's desk with a smirk. Here you go, Zara. No need to get your boyfriend involved. Blake's composure didn't waver, though Zara could see the fury in his eyes. My office. Now, Warner. As Derek brushed past them, Blake turned to Zara, his professional mask dropping to reveal concern. Are you all right? Did he hurt you? I'm fine, Zara assured him, though her hands were shaking slightly. He was just trying to intimidate me. Blake's expression hardened. This ends tonight. I'm not letting him or anyone else harass you because of our relationship. What are you going to do? Zara asked. First, I'm going to deal with Warner, Blake replied grimly. Then, if you're agreeable, I'm going to announce your promotion tomorrow and disclose our relationship to HR properly. No more hiding. Zara took a deep breath, realizing they'd reached a turning point. The past months of secrecy had taken their toll, and Derek's behavior made it clear that hiding wasn't protecting her anyway. Okay, she agreed finally. But I want to earn this position, Blake. I need to know I'm getting it because I deserve it, not because of us. Blake's expression softened as he reached for her hand. Zara, I would never compromise my company or your career by promoting someone unqualified. You're exceptional at what you do. Our relationship doesn't change that. If anything, it's made me more determined to ensure everything is handled properly. His words reassured her, and Zara found herself nodding. Then let's do it. No more hiding. The following day moved at whirlwind speed. Derek was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into his behavior. The board was informed of Blake and Zara's relationship along with the proposed restructuring. And by afternoon, Zara was officially offered the position of editor-in-chief for the new literary imprint, Prism Press. The transition wasn't without challenges. Some colleagues whispered. Others offered congratulations that seemed tinged with doubt, and a few publishing blogs speculated about nepotism. But as weeks passed, and Zara assembled her team, acquired promising manuscripts, and developed a distinct vision for Prism, the whispers faded. 6 months after the gala where they'd first danced, Blake took Zara back to the same jazz club where they'd spent their first evening together. As they settled into the same corner table, memories washing over them, Blake reached across to take her hand. You regret any of it? He asked. The complications, the restructuring, the gossip. Zara considered the question seriously. The past months had been challenging, but also filled with growth, both personally and professionally. Prism Press was thriving under her leadership, with their first list receiving critical acclaim and strong sales. And her relationship with Blake had deepened into something she couldn't imagine living without, Not for a second, she replied honestly. Though I could have done without Derek's drama. Blake's mouth quirked in a half-smile. He did us a favor, in a way, forced us to stop hiding. True, Zara acknowledged, but I would have preferred a less stressful catalyst. Blake squeezed her hand, his expression growing more serious. I have something for you. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Zara's breath caught as he placed it on the table between them. It's not what you think, Blake said, noting her expression. Or rather, not yet. Open it. With trembling fingers, Zara lifted the lid to find a key nestled on black velvet. She looked up questioningly. It's to my apartment, Blake explained. I want you to move in with me, Zara. I'm tired of saying goodnight to you, tired of waking up without you. I want us to build a life together properly. Tears pricked at Zara's eyes. The key represented more than an address change. It was a public declaration, a commitment neither could take lightly. Are you sure? She asked. There will be more talk. Let them talk, Blake replied with conviction. I'm in love with you, Zara Zimmerman. I have been since that first dance. Everything else is just noise. Zara lifted the key from its velvet bed, the weight of it solid and promising in her palm. I love you too, she said, the words coming easily now. And yes, I'll move in with you. Blake's smile was radiant as he leaned across the table to kiss her, unconcerned about who might see. As their lips met, Zara marveled at how one dance at a charity gala had changed the trajectory of her life so completely. The following year brought changes neither could have anticipated. Prism Press published its first bestseller, a lyrical novel Zara had discovered from a debut author that went on to win the National Book Award. Blake guided Hartwick Publishing through a digital transformation that increased profits while preserving the company's literary integrity. And their personal life settled into a rhythm of shared mornings, quiet evenings, and weekends filled with books, conversation, and deepening love. On the anniversary of their first dance, Blake took Zara back to the ballroom where it all began, now empty except for a string quartet and a table set for two in the center of the floor. How did you manage this? Zara asked, awestruck as she took in the transformed space. Being a CEO has its privileges, Blake replied with a smile, leading her to the table. I wanted tonight to be special. They dined on exquisite food and reminisced about the past year, the challenges they'd overcome, the successes they'd shared, the life they'd built together. When the quartet began playing the same song they'd first danced to, Blake stood and extended his hand. May I have this dance, Miss Zimmerman? Zara placed her hand in his, feeling the same flutter of excitement she'd experienced a year ago. You may, Mr. Harrington. As they moved across the floor, Blake's arms around her felt like home. Zara rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Happy anniversary, Blake murmured against her hair. Thank you for dancing with me that night. Best decision I ever made, Zara replied, lifting her face to his. Even with all the complications. The music slowed and Blake drew back slightly, his expression suddenly serious. Speaking of decisions. He reached into his pocket and lowered himself to one knee, producing a ring that caught the light from the chandeliers above. Zara's hands flew to her mouth, tears immediately welling in her eyes. Zara Zimmerman, Blake began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. This past year has been the best of my life. You challenge me, support me, and make me happier than I ever thought possible. I came to that gala expecting another tedious business function and instead found the love of my life. Will you marry me? Through her tears, Zara nodded emphatically. Yes, she managed. Yes, Blake. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds, and rose to pull her into his arms, Zara thought about how far they'd come from that first dance. The jealous ex, the office politics, the complications of their professional relationship, all of it had been worth navigating to reach this moment. Blake kissed her deeply, then rested his forehead against hers. "I never expected one dance would lead us here," he said softly. "To forever," Zara replied, lifting her hand to admire the ring that symbolized their future. "To forever," Blake agreed, pulling her close as the quartet continued playing, the music enveloping them in their own private world. Their wedding took place the following spring in the garden of Blake's Hampton's home, with the ocean providing a dramatic backdrop. Zara wore a simple silk gown that made Blake's breath catch when he saw her walking toward him, and they exchanged vows they'd written themselves before a small gathering of family and close friends. Emma, now Zara's deputy at Prism Press, served as maid of honor while Blake's brother Brandon stood as best man. The celebration afterward was intimate and joyful, with dancing under the stars and champagne flowing freely. "Mrs. Harrington," Blake murmured in Zara's ear as they swayed to the music, the new title still unfamiliar but welcome. "That's Editor-in-Chief Harrington to you," Zara teased, making him laugh. "My apologies," he replied, spinning her gently. "Editor-in-Chief Harrington Zimmerman, actually. I rather like that you kept your name professionally." "It made sense," Zara said. "I built my reputation as Zimmerman, but I love being a Harrington too," she added, snuggling closer to him. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Blake led Zara to a quiet spot overlooking the ocean, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders against the cool breeze. "Happy?" he asked, his arm secure around her waist. "Completely," Zara confirmed, leaning into him. "Though I still can't believe how we started, if Derek hadn't been so persistent that night. I would have found another reason to ask you to dance," Blake assured her. "I noticed you the moment you walked into that ballroom." Zara turned to look at him, surprised. "You did, but we'd never met." Blake smiled, a hint of sheepishness in his expression. "I might have seen your photo in your file before then, and asked Emma about you." "Blake Harrington," Zara exclaimed, playfully swatting his arm. "You researched me before the gala." "I was intrigued by your editorial notes," he defended himself with a laugh. "And then I saw you in person, and you were even more captivating than I'd imagined. I spent half the evening working up the courage to approach you." "Until Derek gave you the perfect opening," Zara finished for him, shaking her head in amazement. "And here I thought it was spontaneous chivalry." "The chivalry was genuine," Blake assured her, "but I won't pretend I wasn't grateful for the opportunity." He paused, his expression growing more serious. "Everything that's happened since the promotion, moving in together, this wedding, it's all been because you're extraordinary, Zara, not because of that first dance or any other circumstance." His words warmed her heart, as they always did. Blake had a way of making her feel valued for exactly who she was, her accomplishments and her essence both equally important to him. "I love you," she said simply, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. "And I can't wait to see what our forever looks like." 2 years after their wedding, Zara sat in her office at Prism Press, reviewing final proofs for their fall lineup when her phone buzzed with a message from Blake. "Doctor confirmed. Ready to share our news tonight." A smile spread across her face as she rested a hand on her still flat stomach. At 12 weeks pregnant, they'd been keeping the news private until they passed the first trimester, but now they could finally tell their families and close friends. Zara typed back, "Absolutely. Dinner reservations at 8. I'll tell Emma I'm leaving early today." As she gathered her things to leave, Emma knocked on her open door. "You're looking suspiciously happy," her friend observed. "Good news on the Miller manuscript." "That too," Zara replied, unable to contain her smile, "but something else as well." "You'll find out tonight you're still coming to dinner, right?" Emma nodded, eyeing her curiously. "Wouldn't miss it, though I'm now very intrigued." That evening, gathered around a table at their favorite restaurant with their closest friends and family, Blake stood to raise his glass, his eyes finding Zara's with a look of such profound love that it still took her breath away. "We invited you here tonight to share some news," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "In about 6 months, Zara and I will be welcoming a new addition to our family." The table erupted in delighted exclamations and congratulations. Emma was the first to reach Zara, enveloping her in a tight hug. "I knew something was different. You've been practically glowing for weeks." Blake's brother Brandon clapped him on the back before pulling him into a rare embrace. "You're going to be an incredible father," he told Blake, his voice gruff with emotion. As the celebration continued around them, Blake made his way to Zara's side, placing a protective hand on her waist. "Happy?" he asked quietly, echoing the question he'd asked on their wedding night. "More than I ever thought possible," Zara replied honestly. Looking around at the loved ones surrounding them, she marveled at how full her life had become since that fateful dance 3 years ago. Later that night, as they lay in bed, Blake's hand resting gently on her stomach, Zara voiced the thought that had been circling in her mind. "It's amazing how one moment can change everything. If I hadn't gone to that gala, if Derek hadn't approached me, if you hadn't asked me to dance, we still would have found each other," Blake said with quiet certainty. "Some things are meant to be, Zara. You and me, we were inevitable." Zara smiled in the darkness, comforted by his conviction. "I like that thought, that no matter what paths we took, we would have ended up here." "Exactly," Blake murmured, his voice growing sleepy. "One dance, another meeting, a different circumstance, the details don't matter. We were always heading toward each other." As Blake's breathing deepened into sleep, Zara remained awake a little longer, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From that first dance to this new life growing inside her, every step had led them deeper into a love neither had expected but both had embraced completely. Their daughter, Olivia Grace Harrington, was born on a snowy January morning, her arrival transforming their world once again. Blake, who commanded boardrooms with unwavering authority, was rendered speechless at the sight of the tiny perfect being they'd created, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he held her for the first time. Motherhood brought new challenges and unimaginable joy for Zara. She took 6 months maternity leave, leaving Prism in Emma's capable hands, and found herself reveling in this new role even as she missed aspects of her professional life. Blake proved to be an exceptionally involved father, rearranging his schedule to be home for bath time each evening, and taking Olivia for CEO walks around the neighborhood on weekend mornings, the baby strapped to his chest as he pointed out architecture and birds to her attentive face. When Zara returned to work part-time, they found a new rhythm, shared responsibilities, adjusted priorities, and a deeper appreciation for the family they were building together. Prism continued to flourish under her leadership, publishing critically acclaimed novels that fulfilled her long-held dream of discovering important new voices. On Olivia's first birthday, as they watched their daughter smash her cake with gleeful abandon in their backyard surrounded by friends, Blake wrapped an arm around Zara's waist. "We did good, didn't we?" he murmured, nodding toward their laughing, frosting-covered child. "We did," Zara agreed, leaning into his embrace. "Though I still can't believe how it all started." Blake chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Best dance of my life." "Of our lives," Zara corrected, turning in his arms to face him. "And it's led to the most beautiful forever I could have imagined." As their friends and family gathered around to sing "Happy Birthday" to Olivia, Zara and Blake joined hands. Their fingers intertwined just as their lives had become two separate paths now inextricably woven together, creating a tapestry of love, respect, and shared dreams that would continue unfolding for all the days to come. And though neither could have predicted it that night at the charity gala, when one dance set everything in motion, both knew with absolute certainty that they would choose the same path again and again, dancing their way to forever, step by loving step. 5 years later, Blake stood in the doorway of their daughter's bedroom, watching as Zara read Olivia a bedtime story. At 6, Olivia was a perfect blend of them both, Blake's blue eyes and determined chin, Zara's dark curls and quick laugh. Beside her, tucked against Zara's other side, was 3-year-old Benjamin, their son who had arrived to complete their family with his sunny disposition and endless curiosity. As Zara finished the story and kissed both children goodnight, Blake felt the familiar swell of gratitude that overcame him whenever he looked at his family. From corporate CEO focused primarily on balance sheets and market share, he had become a man whose greatest achievements were measured in bedtime stories and weekend adventures. Zara joined him in the hallway, closing the door softly behind her. "They're almost asleep," she whispered, slipping her hand into his as they walked downstairs. In their living room, evidence of family life was everywhere, children's books mixed with literary novels on the shelves, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, framed photos documenting their journey from newlyweds to parents of 2. It was chaotic and perfect, nothing like the pristine bachelor apartment Blake had inhabited when they'd first met. "I was thinking," Blake said as they settled onto the couch, Zara automatically curling against his side in their habitual position, "about that charity gala coming up next week." Zara murmured, her fingers tracing idle patterns on his arm. "What about it?" "It's been 8 years since we danced at the first one," Blake pointed out. 8 years since everything changed." Zara smiled at the memory. "Hard to believe so much time has passed." "Though looking at Olivia and Ben, I suppose the evidence is undeniable." "I'd like to do something special," Blake continued, "to mark the occasion." "What did you have in mind?" Zara asked, curious now. Blake hesitated, suddenly seeming almost nervous. "I was thinking we could renew our vows." "Not a big ceremony, just something intimate with the kids and our closest friends, to celebrate what we've built together." Zara sat up, surprised and touched by the suggestion. "Blake Harrington, you continue to be the most romantic CEO in publishing." He laughed, the tension leaving his shoulders. "Is that a yes?" "Of course it's a yes," Zara replied, leaning in to kiss him softly. "Though I hope you don't expect me to fit into my wedding dress after 2 children." "You're more beautiful to me now than you were that day," Blake said with complete sincerity. "And I fall more in love with you every year." The renewal ceremony took place in their backyard on a perfect June evening, exactly 8 years after their first dance. Olivia, proud in her role as flower girl, scattered rose petals along the grass, while Benjamin toddled beside her, the ring-bearer's pillow clutched carefully in his small hands. Emma, now editor-in-chief of her own imprint at Hartwick, stood beside Zara as she had at their wedding, while Brandon again served as Blake's best man. The gathering was small, just family, and the friends who had become family over the years. As Zara and Blake exchanged new vows, promising to continue growing together through whatever life brought their way, Zara thought about the journey that had led them here. The unexpected dance that had changed everything, the complications they'd navigated, the family they'd created together. "When I asked you to dance 8 years ago," Blake said, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes. "I never imagined we'd be standing here today, with two beautiful children and a life more wonderful than anything I could have dreamed. You've made me a better man, a better leader, and a better human being, Zara. I love you more today than yesterday, and less than I will tomorrow." Zara's vision blurred with tears as she responded, "That night, I was just trying to escape an uncomfortable situation. Instead, I found the love of my life. Through every challenge and every joy, you've been my partner in the truest sense of the word. I'm more myself with you than I've ever been, and I love the life we've built together. I choose you again, Blake, today and always." As they sealed their renewed vows with a kiss, their children clapping delightedly from the front row, Zara knew that the dance continued. Life with Blake was exactly that, a dance that required trust, communication, occasional missteps, and the willingness to keep moving forward together. Later, as twilight descended and their guests mingled on the lawn, Blake pulled Zara into his arms as the first notes of a familiar song filled the air, the same one they'd danced to at the gala 8 years earlier. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Harrington?" he asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners in the way that still made her heart skip. "Always," Zara replied, stepping into his embrace. As they moved together under the string lights, their children watching wide-eyed from where they danced with their grandparents, Zara rested her head against Blake's shoulder and closed her eyes, savoring the moment. From one unexpected dance to this life overflowing with love, it was a journey neither had anticipated, but both treasured beyond measure. And as Blake held her close, swaying to the music that had started it all, Zara knew with absolute certainty that their forever was just beginning. In the years that followed, Zara and Blake continued to grow together, balancing the demands of their careers with their commitment to family life. Prism Press expanded to become one of the most respected literary imprints in publishing, while Hartwick Publishing thrived under Blake's leadership, adapting to the digital age without sacrificing its dedication to quality literature. Olivia grew into a thoughtful, book-loving 12-year-old with her mother's editorial eye and her father's business instincts, already declaring her intention to run the company someday. Benjamin, at 9, was more interested in science and technology, but shared his parents' love of storytelling, often creating elaborate tales that kept the family entertained during weekend breakfasts. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Blake surprised Zara with a trip back to the jazz club where they'd gone after that first dance. Though the ownership had changed and the decor had been updated, the intimate atmosphere remained, and their corner table was waiting, reserved with a small plaque that read "Harrington Table." "You didn't," Zara said, laughing as she noticed the plaque. "I might have made a small investment in the place last year," Blake admitted with a smile. "Seemed appropriate to preserve our spot." As they settled in with glasses of wine, reminiscing about the early days of their relationship, Zara marveled at how some things remained constant while others evolved. Blake's hair now had distinguished touches of silver at the temples, and fine lines had appeared at the corners of her own eyes, but the connection between them had only deepened with time. "You ever think about retirement?" Zara asked, the question emerging from recent thoughts about their future. Blake looked surprised. "Are you getting tired of publishing?" "Not tired exactly," Zara clarified, tracing the rim of her wineglass thoughtfully. "But I've been thinking about what's next. Olivia will be off to college in 6 years, Ben not long after. Maybe it's time to start planning for a new chapter." Blake nodded slowly, considering. "I've had some thoughts about that too. The company is strong, our leadership team is solid. I could step back to chairman, and let someone else take the CEO role within the next few years. And do what instead? Zara asked, curious about how he envisioned their future. A smile spread across Blake's face. Remember that bookstore we visited in that small coastal town last summer? The one with the apartment above it. Zara's eyes widened as she caught his meaning. You can't be serious. You want to run a bookstore, not just any bookstore, Blake clarified. A carefully curated independent bookshop in a beautiful location with an editorial consulting business on the side. You could work with promising authors. I could handle the business aspects, and we'd have more time for ourselves and each other. The vision was surprisingly appealing. After years in the corporate publishing world, the idea of a more intimate connection to books and readers held a certain charm. You've really thought about this, Zara observed. It's just an idea, Blake said, reaching across the table to take her hand. We have time to figure it out, but whatever comes next, I want it to be something we build together, just like everything else. The future stretched before them, full of possibilities. Their children would grow and find their own paths. Their careers would evolve. But the foundation they'd built remained unshakable, a partnership forged in that first unexpected dance, and strengthened through years of shared joys, challenges, and unwavering love. Later that night, as they stood on the balcony of their hotel room overlooking the city where their story had begun, Blake wrapped his arms around Zara from behind, both of them gazing at the twinkling lights below. 15 years ago, I asked you to dance to rescue you from an uncomfortable situation, he murmured against her ear. Best decision I ever made. Zara turned in his arms, lifting her face to his. And here we are, still dancing. Always, Blake promised, lowering his lips to hers. As they kissed under the night sky, the past, present, and future merged into a single truth that one dance had indeed led them to forever. A forever that continued to unfold in ways neither could have imagined but both cherished beyond measure. From that fateful gala where a CEO had protected her from a jealous ex, offering his hand for a dance that changed everything, to this moment 15 years later, their love story had become richer and deeper with each passing day. And whatever the future held, they would face it as they had everything else together, step by loving step, dancing their way through forever.